So if I ask someone what they think a computer is, to the average person, a computer just means something that runs Windows or Mac maybe. But if we actually wanted to build a computer, if that was the intent behind asking the question, this is a complicated venture. We can't all build something that runs Windows on its own. And if we wanted something simpler, maybe we could say something that does math. But even this, how do you make something that does maths on its own? So if you really boiled it down to its bare bones, a computer just might be something that takes an input and gives back an output. So if we just go with this definition for some time, it is an incomplete and almost wrong definition, but if we still just go with it, we might even think of a simple electric circuit like this as a computer. This, as you can see, is just a circuit with a switch, a bulb, and a battery, a bulb, and a switch. And it's the same circuit with the switch closed. And you can think of the switch as the input and the bulb as the output. And so when the switch is on, the output is on, and when the switch is off, the output is off. Let's make it even simpler. Instead of writing on and off, we can write something like zeros and ones maybe. So when the input is 1, as in the switch is on, the output is 1 as the bulb is on. If the input is 0, where the switch is off, the output is 0, the bulb is off. And so we have this little table that helps us keep track of what happens as we switch the circuit on or off. And if we move on to this next circuit here, these two, they are the same circuit with the switch open here and closed here. And if we tabulate the result here once again, we notice that when the switch is off, the bulb is glowing because the circuit is still complete this way. So the output is 1 in the form of a glowing bulb. And when the switch is on, the bulb stops glowing because we have kind of shorted this circuit with another path of lesser resistance. So in fact, when I switch on the circuit, the bulb switches off. And this might start to look familiar to people who have seen our previous episode. If I move on to the next circuit, where I'm making it out of 2 switches, so 2 inputs. These 4 are the same circuits, just with different inputs. So if I write input and output, and since this time we have 2 inputs, we might do something like A and B. When I keep track of what happens here, when both of these switches are off, as in both of them are 0, my output is 0 because the bulb doesn't glow because the circuit is incomplete. When one of the switches is off and the other one is switched on, like here, the circuit still isn't complete, so the output continues to be 0. If I go on and try the other way around, where I switch on one circuit and switch off the other one, the bulb still doesn't glow because the circuit is still incomplete. But if I switch both of them on, the bulb would now glow because this circuit is complete and the bulb can have current going through it. Again, this might seem familiar. Moving on, if I arrange a circuit like this, these 4 are the same circuits, just with different states of switches. And if I try to keep track of the input and output a bit more neatly this time, maybe not. Okay, this is gonna have to do. When both of these switches are off, of course the current is not, the current isn't going to flow because this circuit isn't complete, so we don't have any output. The bulb stays off. But as soon as I switch on just one of these switches, but keep the other one switched off, the circuit is now complete. So the bulb starts glowing. If I switch on the other one and keep the other one switched off, the bulb still glows because the circuit is complete this way. And of course, if I switch on both of them, the circuit is clearly complete. So the bulb is on. At this point, the tables should start to look familiar, to be the NOT, OR, and AND operations, kind of physical manifestations of these logical operators. So even though we haven't built something that does maths, we have built something that does logic. And instead of thinking of these as all of the circuits that we just drew with all the nitty-gritty details, we can kind of abstract these things to be little boxes which take inputs and give out outputs. So one of those boxes takes the input and just inverts it. If it gets a 1, it inverts it to a 0, and if it gets a 0, it inverts it to a 1. I can have another box that takes 2 inputs and gives the AND of those 2 inputs. So if both of them are 0, it gives out a 0. Of course, you know the table, so if both of them are 1, it gives out a 1. If one of them is 1 and the other one 0, it gives out a 0. And the third one, that also takes 2 inputs, but does an OR operation with the 2. And of course, you're familiar with the OR operation as well. And instead of making these boxes with NOT and OR written on them, I can give symbols to these. So I can make this, and this is going to be a NOT. I don't have to write anything anymore. I can make this, and this can be an AND without me having to write anything. And I can make this, and this can be my OR gate. And these little abstractions of the circuits that we built are called logic gates. So we already built components that can do logical operations, and we're going to try to make more fun stuff and tinker around with these toys that we've just made for ourselves, and try to figure out if we can make these do maths, so make them add numbers together or subtract numbers together.